First of all, I want to say, Ish, great job on the conference. I can't tell you enough how hard these things are to put on. So, round of applause for Ish, please. And so I was actually supposed to be in D.C. this week with Stu Burguiere. I'm about to introduce him. My name is Brenton Evans. I'm the president of Predictable Media. I found out about this conference. I knew that there was going to be a lot of just important people in the prediction space here attending. And so Stu went to D.C. this week. He launched the new show that we have on the media platform and flew in last night. So today we're going to introduce to you Predictable Media, which we believe is the media layer for prediction markets that we're launching. Then Stu has a new show called Predictable with Stu. I'll have him introduce himself and give you a little bit more background. But he is an industry veteran in the media space. But he was Glenn Beck's co-host for 28 years. Recently left that program to start Predictable Media. He does a bunch of other stuff as well with The Blaze, has a new show there as well, but really has a passion for prediction markets. And so what we're going to do is just talk through our media company, let Stu explain a little bit of what he's doing. But yesterday he had an interview with the CFTC chairman, which is pretty cool. He'll talk about it as well. So I want to introduce Stu, and go ahead, Stu, tell everybody about.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. I appreciate it. It's nice to be in a room with a lot of people who are a lot smarter than I am. So it's been nice to talk to a lot of you. As Brent mentioned, I've been in sort of mainstream media and conservative media for about 30 years through CNN, Fox News, Blaze TV, the Glenn Beck Program, a bunch of different places. And most of it has been covering politics, generally speaking. I'm the chief elections analyst over at the Blaze. So very early on, I think, in prediction market world, I got interested in this field because I think there's a real layer of nonsense in our media, and you guys probably see that. I think a lot of times regular people do not get a correct picture as to what's coming. I see from a lot of people talking to callers who would call into the radio program over a long period of time that they would be very surprised by things that didn't surprise a lot of the people that I knew in politics and in the media. And frankly, I just think that's wrong, and I think that we should have a way to be able to communicate to people what's actually going on. Prediction markets tend to do a really good job with that because people are putting their money where their mouth is, and price discovery is so strong through these markets. So what we wanted to do with Predictable Media, I was with, as Brent mentioned, Glenn Beck for almost 30 years, was to try to do something a little bit different in the space. Our media company is less about the inner workings of all the different trades that we might do, but more about how to view the news through the lens of prediction markets, using it as an additional layer for people to be able to understand what's actually going on. We going through this project has been really interesting. I was in D.C. This week, and the first thing I did was have a dinner with about 20 different journalists from mainstream side to conservative side, libertarians, kind of the whole spectrum. And what was fascinating, and I think it was Aaron who was up here before, was really interesting in that, all of their questions were about stuff like he was putting up there. Every single question was about the outlier cases, the crazy insiders, all the stuff that's on Twitter. Things like, war markets and terrorism markets and all the stuff that you see talked about. And they're very disconnected. It's very early, and they don't really understand what the utility of these markets is. And I think it's important that we have a media layer that can look at this and present to people that there really is a public utility here. I think it's a really important one. And I also think that there is room for average people to access these markets in a way that is a lot easier for them than maybe some of these more opaque spaces when you're talking about, funds and stocks and bonds and all of these things that average people don't understand, but maybe they do understand that their senator is a weasel and is going to fail on this vote that they really need at the right time. It's, of course, interesting and I think fun for a lot of people to participate, but I think it's also a good way for us to communicate what's actually happening in the world. So that's what we're trying to do with Predictable Media.
Yeah, and one of the things about prediction markets that I believe is good because there's Democrats and Republicans, so you have both sides of the aisle, but really being able to see that through a very neutral lens, just to look at the data, I mean, we can all coexist in prediction markets. He's a diehard Eagles fan. I'm a diehard Cowboys fan. We can exist on stage together and have civil discourse. But in the world of prediction markets, we're trying to help folks not use words like gambling or betting, and get more into the space of like common day interest for people out there that might be broader. So the question that I was just asked is, are we like TBPN or some of these networks that are out there that are more focused on financial information, crypto information? What do you believe is sort of the sweet spot for Predictable with Stu, your new show?
Yeah, I'm hoping that we're going to present value to a lot of different groups. I kind of look at it as sort of threefold, honestly. One is to be able to sort of deliver information to people who are news consumers. My audience largely are people who are generally center-right, who are very interested in politics, care about whether some bill is going to pass, cares about congressional elections and all of these things, but it's constantly getting crappy information through the media space. This is using this layer to help clarify that world for them is one part of it. Another is looking for opportunities. I mean, prediction markets are great. They're great at price discovery. I hope they're not that great because I want to make some money off of them. So there are opportunities out there. I think there are with people coming into the space and learning about these things, there are dangers. We want to walk them through if they're coming in so they go slowly and make sure that they don't get swallowed up like Aaron was showing before. We don't want that to happen. We want them to come in and be able to have a good experience. I look at people who have money in their bank accounts that is earning 0.01% in their checking account. We can do better than that. And one of the things that we're talking about here is we really are trying to present it. And I have no problem with gambling at all. I like gambling. We're here in Vegas. I think it's wonderful. But what we're trying to do is position it in a different way. I want people to come in and try to look at these things and take responsible risks that they're responsible for, but also, we're not looking necessarily to hype the super long shot, the crazy conspiracies all the time. I want people to be able to pay for a vacation, maybe improve their life a little bit, go out to dinner on Polymarket or Kalshi every once in a while. Finally, I also think it's important for there to be a media voice, and this was certainly codified in DC this week, talking to all these journalists. There needs to be a voice for this industry advocating for the good of it. There has to be somebody out there saying, you know what, yeah, sure, there's a sexy story about some insider who got arrested over X, Y, and Z. But here is what is actually happening. Here are the positives that are going on. Here, a lot of the stuff that you're hearing on CNN, it's so sexy to these guys to hear the story about the insider, about how, people will lose money and it's ruining their lives. Those stories are real and they're important. It's an important part of this whole thing. But I think it's also important that people understand there's a real public utility here, that a lot of this stuff is spin and nonsense and hype for clicks, and we should be able to disassemble that a little bit and explain to people that these if we go about this the right way, this can be a really exciting new industry. If we allow this to get taken over and attacked constantly by media members who don't know what they're talking about, we're going to wind up with a lot of problems. And it's going to be difficult to defend. I know a lot of these congressmen. I know, I've seen them react to these stories for 1 million years. They are just as susceptible to hype as your grandfather who's forwarding you Facebook memes. This is like, these people react to this stuff. There has to be a voice to defend the castle a little bit. And, when needed, we're willing to do that as well.
So yesterday I was at the conference, and a lot of the discussion was about the government, the intrusion or the lack of allowing certain things in the prediction market space. And the CFTC chair was mentioned several times, both the previous administrations and now the current one. You were with Michael Selig yesterday, interviewing him. So just tell everyone here today, what were some of the highlights? What were some of the interesting things you found in the conversation with him?
Yeah, and if you want to watch the interview, we did about a half hour with Michael Selig yesterday. It's up on YouTube. It's a Predictable Show is what we do at predictableshow.com. He was really interesting. I think, there is certainly a mixed group of feelings when it comes to our current president and his administration. Not everyone loves him. Not everyone hates him, of course. And there's a couple different types of people I think that are in the administration. Some, are maybe more in the media, more focused on the public perception of the administration. Michael Selig is much more like, I hope you wouldn't mind me saying this, a nerd. He's a guy who really thinks about this in his life. He was at the SEC before this, one of their head crypto guys. You may know him from that period. And now he's the CFTC chair. It is amazing talking to a lot of people in the media who are just discovering this. You guys are really early. You guys are way ahead of the game. You're way ahead of the people doing the news stories on your industry. And, they don't even understand the difference between, a regulated market here in the United States and one that might be, dealing in, having some of these more controversial issues. They just see it all as one thing. They see insider trading around every corner. They see, terrorism and death markets around every corner. They don't understand the difference. And, talking to Selig about this, he's really clear. Like, there are laws. People are like, I was reading a newsletter today, and they was like, oh, well, I have a friend who is at this, he works for CBS, and he is on one of these reality shows, and he makes some extra money on the side, cleaning up on his little reality show picks, because of course he knows what's happening. It's very easy for him to do. I'm like, you've just described a crime. This is a literal crime in the United States. It is illegal to do that, and people, I think, forget, because these markets are fun and interesting and kind of cool to talk about, that they're actual financial markets regulated by the CFTC. They take this stuff pretty seriously. And all these people who think they're going to jump into these markets and because they know something and throw $50,000 on some long shot bet, and it happens to magically turn the right way for them, and they turn it into hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars, they're going to recognize this. These companies have actual incentives to make sure this stuff isn't happening. And look, I'm a capitalist. It's not because they're the nicest people in the world or the most moral people in the world. I don't count on that. You never know with that type of stuff. There's lots of great people, but many aren't. The bottom line is there are companies worth tens of billions of dollars that want to be worth tens of billions of dollars more. And that is why they actually care about this. They want to make sure that they're presenting a good foot forward, so every story about them isn't this horror story about an 18-year-old who's lost everything from their mom's credit card, because they know, whether it's Elizabeth Warren or a Republican or someone around the corner, they're going to want to make a lot of news cracking down on them if they don't look like they're a responsible organization. Whether they are or not is up to you. I mean, of course, there's your mileage may vary on that, but it is important, I think, for people to understand that these things are crimes. They are out there talking about this, and they are looking for them. And honestly, they want to set examples. So what I always say to people when like, oh, I don't know, is this insider trading? Am I using this information? If you're asking that question, it's probably yes. So don't screw with it, because there is a chance that you will be the highlight, you will be the example.
Like the soldier yesterday from the Maduro.
Yeah, exactly. We have a piece about that up on predictableshow.com right now. That is a major. That is legitimately horrific, right? We could have had United States servicemen killed because of that. It is a horrible, horrible thing, and should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. What is interesting about it is being prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. These things are taken seriously. And, I have a big libertarian streak in myself. Like, there are a lot of, I think, really interesting academic arguments and about the value of insider information and how it does inform markets. But when it comes down to this stuff, like, there's also a political reality. And the political reality of regulation in the United States is they're going to find any reason to crack down on this industry because they don't like financial innovation. They're constantly trying to stop it. So hopefully we can have a voice that will, give a little bit of life and a little bit of protection when needed and when justified to an industry that I think is a real positive.
So your background is heavily, in politics and political commentary, with sports being such a huge part of the prediction markets. Predictable Stu, you're covering obviously the midterms coming up. You've got a lot there, but kind of just set a little vision for beyond politics, sports, pop culture, what you believe is the next iteration of the demographic in America. Like my wife, for example, how do I get her into, the space to watch and consume media around prediction markets where she can have a position, not a bet, but a position on something like the streaming artist of the week or whatever it is?
Yes, my wife is very interested in streaming charts. She's now won $7 on her $20 investment, so she's up 35%. Much of this on a wager on what would be the top Netflix investment, on the top Netflix stream of the week. I was a little concerned that she liked it. It was called Gaslit by My Husband, which unfortunately, she did win on that one, by the way. I think, sports is another interesting thing. I love sports. As he mentioned, I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, America's team. And
that's not true.
That is true. But I was talking to Michael Seelig yesterday, who is also an Eagles fan, so we know he's a good person. And we were talking about the utility of these markets. One of the things that's fascinating to a lot of the people in New York and DC that I've talked to in the media is, why do we allow things like sports? Why do we allow things like betting on, and they call it betting all the time, on Netflix streams and everything else? Part of this is just, he called it merit policing. The CFTC is not involved in merit policing. We make sure the rules are followed. We don't have a position as to whether a particular piece of information is valid. You might say that there's no real value in finding out, whether the Eagles win a game or the Cowboys win a game. First of all, there is to me. I've hedged Eagles losses many, many times. I must be rewarded for my pain if I'm going to sit through a game where they lose to his stupid team. But also, it's kind of like a lot of this information is important to people. There is a social interest to people. And, it's kind of just like judging. What's not interesting to me at all are pork belly futures. I don't care what happens to pork belly futures. That's not my interest. I care much more about what happens to the Eagles. So there is interest there. And they are, at least with the current administration, focused on making sure that this has some breathing room, that there's room for this industry to grow and to thrive and to turn into something that hopefully is long-lasting. We don't know what's around the corner. Every one of these stories, like what we saw in Venezuela, with the Venezuela situation, is going to be another kind of like knock on the foundation. And it's important that we have, I think, a strong foot forward to be able to show that, this isn't some scandalous thing all the time. Of course people are going to abuse it, just like they abuse a restaurant, or there's Applebee's has an OM cheeseburger right now where you take the cheeseburger and you dip it in a tray of cheese and then eat it. To me, that sounds, first of all, incredible, but secondly, like something that could probably be abused, and no one is going to go in the news and whine about it. They're focused on this. They care about it because they want to kind of slander this industry. It's their thing right now. They are focused on it. They want to do it. Not everybody in the media. Some are really, I think, have some thoughtful questions. But there's a lot of this going on. So I think it's important to cover that stuff.
So our time's almost up. We wanted to introduce the show and the media network to you. Open up to questions right now. And then if you want to find out more, the QR code will send you to predictableshow.com, which is the Substack page right now, for all the content that we have. So any questions? I see a hand over here.
Scream as loud as you can. Just scream. He's coming over, I think, with it. If anyone wants any tips from my wife on Netflix streaming markets, just let me know.
So first of all, congratulations on the launch. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
And it's great to see someone like yourself, Stu, getting into our little nerdy world here. It's really exploding, but to see kind of the more, I don't know if calling you mainstream media is appropriate. I don't know if that's the right identifier, but it's good to see that attention because this is important and it's growing very quickly. You mentioned the downside of these Maduro markets, and you mentioned that the CFTC is not really the merit police. They're not trying to say something, whether something is interesting or valuable or even true. They're just trying to make sure that the laws are being followed. But one of the great promises of prediction markets for decades has been that it produces information that is useful to policymakers. What about the people in the US government that are actually benefiting from learning about Russia, Ukraine? I mean, even 10 years ago, Tetlock was going up against the CIA. It wasn't a prediction market, but he was showing that he could outperform the intelligence community, and that is just very valuable to the US government. Are people looking at the geopolitical markets and learning from them? Do they care about the information that is coming out of these that advances US interests or public knowledge?
I think it's a great question. And honestly, it's kind of the core of how this thing started. I mean, really, DARPA was one of the very first initiators of this. After 9/11, their vision of what a prediction market would be was really more of insider intelligence officers who, I'm working in Syria and I'm seeing this new threat pop up. I'm going to buy shares in that, in a way almost to cut through bureaucracy, right? I'm a conservative. As a conservative, I tend to view markets as a real positive, as a way to improve outcomes. I don't want the government pricing my bananas. I'd much rather see that happen through markets. The same thing happens with information. I think prediction markets do a good job with that. I have a lot of sympathy, honestly, for your argument. It's an interesting battle, I think, between the sort of academic realities of what would be beneficial and what the political realities are with this right now. People are constantly complaining about Chris Hayes did an interview with X, Y, or Z, and there was a market on what he was going to say in this interview, but it was a pre-recorded interview, and he was complaining about how people might know what was there and what was being said, and they're getting ahead of this market. When you fundamentally look at what prediction markets were designed to do initially, there's really nothing wrong with that. We got the information quicker than it was even available to broadcast. In a way, it actually told the future. And that was something that is, I can understand being in that market and getting beat up by something like that is something that you don't like. From a purist, part of me that looks at as information as the core of what we're trying to get out of these markets, I think you're right. It's an argument that I wound up getting into the other night with a bunch of these journalists, particularly the libertarians, who were like, "Hey, wait a minute, this is what these markets are supposed to bring," and it's an interesting debate. I do think it's one that is only going to become a reality when you're looking at overseas markets and stuff that's outside of the purview of the government. I think for these things to settle in, the political realities are going to be that stuff is going to be banned. It currently is, but will continue to be banned, and probably will at some outlier part weaken the signal. They probably will weaken the effectiveness of the information delivery, but I think that's just one of those things we're going to put up with if we want to do it here in the United States.
I think we have time for one more question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, talking about whether there's a back and forth, just political polarization. I know I've watched cable news for years. I've done it for years, and we used to always call it kind of just the two box thing, where there's just two people in a box and they're kind of screaming at each other, and I don't feel like I get anything out of it. I'm not interested in that, and I don't think it's effective. I don't think it's interesting, for most people. They're sort of sick of it. We've kind of been down that road for a really long time. The formula has been there for a long time. It's one of the reasons why I'm interested in this, because I think we can kind of cut through that long-standing thing that we've seen on cable news forever. Right now, cable news has, a lot of them have partnered with prediction markets, and the way they're using prediction markets are, hey, we're going to do the same thing we've done for decades and decades and decades, and then the punctuation point at the end is we're going to say Kalshi or Polymarket and give you a percentage. That's basically what they're doing. We're looking at it as the complete opposite. Like our sentence is prediction markets. The opinion will still be there. We'll still talk to people about what might happen. We'll have reporters like digging into this stuff, but we want to kind of take it through that lens. And while we're up here, I would love to make the pitch to you guys, especially people who are traders and creators. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to have you guys on. I'd love to have a discussion with you and hear what you guys have learned, how you've come to the positions that you have. A lot of people, particularly in my audience, are not prediction market natives. They're political obsessives. They really think about this stuff all the time, but they don't know it all. I'd love to be able to talk to you guys, hear about your mistakes, hear about your successes, the things that you're interested in, the markets that you're finding, because I think it will help average people improve their lives and improve their understanding, but at the same time, hopefully improve our media diet by a 0.1%, because we're going the opposite way and have been for so long. So I would love to make it a little bit better.
So the show launched this week in DC. We're in the studio in Dallas next week, running the full show. And so, yeah, if you guys want to connect with us, we're launching fully right now, and would hope to stay connected. This has been a great experience to meet everyone in real life. A lot of the people in the prediction market space you only know their avatars and their profile pics. So it's great to see a lot of people in real life. So thank you, Ish, again for the conference, and thank you all for the session.
Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.